Moonrise, Chapter 6, Final Decisions. The bell rang for lunch, and all of the students quickly filed out of the classroom. I took my time, knowing that the halls would be filled with students. I saw Jasper walking towards me, and I met him halfway, and we continued to walk to the cafeteria. Then I received a vision. Edward and Bella sitting together during lunch. I smiled to myself as the vision ended. Jasper's hand had looped around my elbow as he guided me toward the cafeteria. "What did you see?" he asked me in a very low whisper. "Edward won't be sitting with us today. He's going to have Bella sit with him," I said happily. Emmett and Rosalie came up to us then, and Rosalie was fuming. She had heard what I said, and was the only one who was angry about it. The four of us walked into the cafeteria. Rosalie stalked past him without a glance. "Can I talk to Bella now?" I asked in my head. "Stay out of it," he said under his breath, which wiped away my smile immediately. "Fine, be stubborn. It's only a matter of time," I went on. He sighed audibly. "Don't forget about today's biology lab," I reminded him, going on to lighter topics. He nodded, and I sat down at our normal table with Jasper beside me. Edward waved her over, and she willingly joined him after a while. The table was silent, and I knew everyone was listening to what Edward and Isabella were talking about. Finally, something caught our attention. "What are you thinking?" Edward asked. It was so unusual for him to say that. He always knew what everyone was thinking, except for Bella. "I'm trying to figure out what you are," she said quietly, but we all caught it. "Are you having any luck with that?" he asked lightly. He was not taking this seriously, and all of us knew it. "Not too much," she admitted as she looked down. We all slightly relaxed at hearing this. "What are your theories?" he asked her, and then she started to blush. After a moment, he went on. "You won't tell me?" he asked. "Too embarrassing," she said to him. "That is really frustrating, you know," he told her. "No, I can't imagine why that would be frustrating at all. Just because somebody doesn't tell you what they are thinking, even if all they are doing is making up cryptic little remarks specifically designed to keep you up at night, wondering what they could possibly mean. Now why would that be frustrating?" she asked, as her eyes bore into his. He frowned at her, clearly upset by what she had said. "You have a bit of a temper, don't you?" he asked, changing the subject. "I don't like double standards," she replied. A chuckle escaped Edward's lips. "What?" she asked in an irritated voice. "Your boyfriend thinks I'm being unpleasant to you. He is debating whether or not to come over and break up our fight," Edward said to her. "I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure you're wrong anyways," she said icily. "I'm not. I told you. Most people are easy to read," he stated. I didn't know if he was doing it on purpose, but he was telling her entirely too much. "Except me," she said. "Yes, except you," he replied. "I wonder why that is," he said, mumbling to himself. "Aren't you hungry?" he asked her as she opened her lemonade. "No. You?" she asked him. "No, I'm not hungry," he stated. "Could you do me a favor?" she asked suddenly. "That depends on what you want," Edward told her. "It's not much," she promised him. "I just wondered if you could warn me beforehand if you're going to avoid me, just for my own good." "That sounds fair," he said. "Thanks." Then can I have one in return? He asked. One, she allowed. Tell me one theory, he said to her. We all stiffened at our table again. Not that one, she said, as she looked down again. They started to argue about what was fair and unfair, and I started to tune them out. I turned to see the expressions on my family's faces. Emmett was not smiling, but I could tell he was amused by the two of them. Rosalie was fuming. Her hand gripped the edge of the table, as if she were about to smash it. I sighed and turned to Jasper. Jasper's face was expressionless. There was a small smile that played at his lips, but it didn't go very far. I brought my hand softly to touch his shoulder. His gaze rested on me gently. Remember what I asked of you? I asked him in a whisper. He nodded, barely. Please just give this time, I begged him. His hand met with mine, and he squeezed it reassuringly. I knew that he would try his best for me. Thank you, I whispered. Kryptonite doesn't bother me either, I heard Edward say quickly, and I was now listening to their conversation again. A chuckle escaped his lips, and Bella scowled at him. You weren't supposed to laugh, remember? Bella said to him, and he pressed his lips together. I will figure it out eventually, she promised him. I really wish you wouldn't, he told her. Because? What if I'm not the superhero? What if I'm the bad guy? He asked. A hiss came from Rosalie across the table, and I heard an audible crumble. I looked over to see her hand had crushed part of the table. Emmett immediately took her hands and tried to calm her, but she refused him. Oh, she paused. I see. Do you? He pressed. You're dangerous, she guessed. But not bad. I don't believe that you're bad, she said. You're wrong, Edward stated. The bell had rung, and she jumped to her feet now, just realizing it. We're going to be late, she said. I'm not going to class, he told her. Why not? It's healthy to ditch class every now and then, Edward said with a shrug. Well, I'm going, she said, as the four of us got out of our seats and left the almost empty cafeteria silently. I'll see you later then, Edward said. Then they parted. I walked to my history class and took my seat. Jasper and I would go hunting tonight. Our family stuck to a regular schedule now, going longer than needed, but not overdoing anything in the process. I thought about our hunting trip the entire time, until the bell rang for us to head to our last class of the day. I walked into my lecture class and took my seat. We had a test today, but that was never a problem for me. I knew everything possible about what the teachers taught these days. I quickly took my test and sat there for a handful of minutes until someone turned in their test. I never turned mine in first. I didn't need to draw more attention to myself than was already there. Then I received a vision of Edward, making me drive Bella's truck home. Everyone was already there as I skipped to Edward's side and held out my hand for Bella's keys. I only saw that I was. You'll have to tell me the whys, I said to him smugly. This doesn't mean... I know. I will wait. It won't be long, I said. He gave me the keys and followed behind me to Bella's house. I parked the car quickly and got into the back of the car as Edward sped off. We got home quickly. The roads were empty now. We all walked into the house, and I went to my computer so I could work on a fashion design for Rosalie. Jasper and Emmett started an intense chess game, utilizing 8 chessboards. They would never let me or Edward play, saying we would cheat or whatnot. I started to work on her wardrobe as my fingers flew across the tweaked touchscreen. I then stopped and leaned my head around the wall to mouth Emmett's next moves to Jasper. Emmett sat on the floor with his back towards me, and Jasper smoothly showed no sign of looking at me. He cut off Emmett's night easily. Something caught my attention. I heard the keys of Edward's piano as he moved his fingers up and down the scale, making sure the pitch was right. His hand started to play a melody that I had never heard before. He stopped, and then a short laugh came out of his mouth, but was soon muffled as Rosalie turned and glared at him. Emmett and Jasper turned to stare, and Esme was now coming down the stairs. "Don't stop, Edward," she said softly. Rosalie stood up quickly and stomped out of the den angrily. "What's wrong, Rose?" Emmett asked. She continued to walk to the garage, and Emmett turned. "What was that about?" he asked Edward. "I don't have the faintest idea," Edward said, but I knew he was lying. Emmett grumbled. "Keep playing," Esme encouraged. He continued, and she came to stand behind him. "It's charming. Does it have a name?" Esme asked after a while. "Not yet." "Is there a story to it?" she asked, with a smile playing on her lips. "It's a lullaby, I suppose," he said after thinking about it. "A lullaby," she echoed. I soon left my work and went to sit with Edward at the bench. I started to hum the tune 2 octaves higher than what he was playing. "I like it. What about this?" he murmured to me. He added what I had done to the harmony, tuning it slowly as he went. "Yes, perfect," he murmured. Edward soon ended the song and bowed his head in defeat. "Thanks," he whispered as he looked up at Esme. She must have told him something. "Stop it, Mom. You're going to make me blush," he teased her lightly. I laughed and flipped through his songbook until I found Heart and Soul. He grinned and completed the harmony with me, then played Chopsticks for me. I giggled, then sighed. "So I wish you would tell me what you were laughing at Rose about, but I can see you won't," I said. "Nope," he said. I flicked his ear with my finger. "Be nice, Alice. He is being a gentleman," Esme chided. "But I want to know," I whined. He chuckled. "Here, Esme," he said, and started playing her favorite song. He played the song beautifully, and when it ended, Esme sighed. "Thank you, dear," she murmured. He continued to play, only half in it this time, as he thought about something. Then a vision hit me, one that I knew Jasper would enjoy. "Oh, Jasper, guess what?" I said. Edward's hands froze over the keys as Jasper replied. "What, Alice?" "Peter and Charlotte are going to visit next week. They're going to be in the neighborhood. Isn't that nice?" I said. "What's wrong, Edward?" Esme asked as she squeezed his shoulders. "Peter and Charlotte are coming to Forks?" Edward hissed at me. "Calm down, Edward. It's not their first visit," I told him as I rolled my eyes. His teeth clenched together, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. It was the first time that Bella would be here when they were here. I frowned at him. "They never hunt here. You know that," I said with exasperation. "When?" he asked. I pursed my lips unhappily. "Monday morning. No one is going to hurt Bella." "No." "You ready, Emmett?" Edward asked as he turned his head in Emmett's direction. "I thought we were leaving in the morning," Emmett replied. We're coming back by midnight Sunday. I guess it's up to you when we leave, Edward stated. Okay, fine. Let me say goodbye to Rose first, Emmett said. That would not be much of a goodbye. Sure, Edward answered. After a few moments, Edward spoke again. I suppose I have. I didn't know what he was talking about. Neither did Esme or Jasper. Play the new song for me one more time, Esme said, changing the subject. If you'd like that, Edward said kindly, and started to play the lullaby once more. As Edward ended the song, he nodded to himself. Esme and I shared a confused glance, wondering what he was thinking. Emmett returned from the garage, and Edward left the piano, as they both ran from the house and across the lake in mere seconds. What is wrong? Esme asked me. Edward is just being irrational. He knows that Peter and Charlotte have never hunted anywhere near Forks when they come to visit us, so they won't complicate things. He is just being unnecessarily overprotective, I said, as I rolled my eyes. At least he isn't leaving us, she said with a sigh. I nodded. Trust me, he won't be leaving. He can't find it in him to part with this human girl, I spoke with reassurance. Jasper came to sit with me on the bench and wrapped his arms around me, pulling me slightly closer. He could have just told them. They would think he was crazy, but they would listen to him, Jasper stated. Edward is just being Edward, I said with a shrug. Then I spoke on a lighter topic. Would you like to come hunting with Jazz and I asked Esme. No, I'll go when Carlisle gets home from the hospital. But ask Rose, okay? She said. We both nodded and walked to the garage, where Rosalie was sitting with her knees pulled up to her chest. Rose, do you want to go hunting with us? I asked her. She didn't answer. I pulled away from Jasper and walked over to my only sister and sat beside her. Rosalie, what's wrong? I asked. She continued to stay silent, so I sat there as well, knowing she would break soon enough. Jasper went to sit on the other side of her. I felt a warm, calm atmosphere fill the space around us, and Rosalie started to relax. We sat there in the same position for about 45 minutes, until I gave up. I stood up and turned back to Rosalie, who now had her eyes on me. I'm here if you need someone to talk to, I murmured quietly. Jasper stood as well, and gave a solemn smile to Rosalie. She smiled gently up at us, but it did not reach her eyes. Jasper took my hand, and we started to walk from the garage. Jasper, Alice, she said in a barely audible voice. We turned slightly to look at her. Thanks, she whispered. We smiled down at her. I've wasted enough of you two's time. I will go with Carlisle and Esme later, she said to us. Jasper and I started running through the trees, matching each other's pace perfectly as our hands were held together at our sides. We headed east for a while, and then looped around and went north for a few miles. Jasper and I usually hunted in this area when it was just the two of us. It was like our secret place. We always came here to sort things out, or to just be left alone for a while. Jasper let go of my hand, and then sped off into the trees, catching a scent. I stood there for a moment, and then went in my own direction, smelling another scent. I ran through the trees, and soon found a small mountain lion stalking a deer. It took me all of a second to be right behind the lion and sink my teeth into its neck, draining it in seconds. When I looked up, the deer was gone. I could still hear the light prance of its feet as it scampered away from the scene. I took a few minutes to hide the evidence, and then go back to where Jasper and I had parted. I reached it soon and saw that Jasper was sitting on a boulder by a waterfall with his legs crossed. He looked up as he heard me, and I came to join him. His hands wrapped around me as he fit me perfectly into his lap. I leaned into him and let out a delicate sigh. "Do you know what's wrong with Rosalie?" I asked him. "I think it's that Edward chose a human girl over her. She hates that Edward thinks the girl is prettier than her. Edward has told me this once before. Rosalie has been rejected by him from the start, not wanting any part of her. That is why their relationship is so poor to begin with. She can't understand why," Jasper said to me. "But why does it matter to her? She has Emmett," I said. "You have to remember that Emmett came after Edward. She didn't have him when she was changed. Carlyle already had Esme, so Edward was the only one that could admire her beauty. But he didn't, and that made her angry," he told me. I nodded. "So this entire thing was never just about Bella then, right?" I asked, as I was starting to catch on. "She doesn't really care about the girl. She just cares that someone chose a human over her. But she'll never admit it to anyone," he answered with a shrug. "Oh," I murmured. Silence fell over us for a while, as we sat in each other's arms. Then something dawned on me. "Wait, so what did she think of the two of us when we came along?" I asked. Jasper knew what I meant by this question, and pulled me in close to him. "Rosalie always thought of me as her older brother. Nothing more, and you know that. We were married when we came to live with them. She didn't care about what I thought about her, because I had you," he stated, as he placed a kiss on my head. "She liked the two of us right from the beginning, and was happy that she had other siblings than Edward," he continued. We fell into silence again, until darkness filled the area. Jasper stood and placed me gently on my feet. "We should head back now," he murmured, and then we were running through the trees. We reached the house, and it was empty. Esme, Carlyle, and Rosalie must have gone hunting already. We walked up to our room, and I went to sit on the bed. Jasper came to sit beside me. "Oh, we don't have to go to school on Monday or Tuesday. 2 sunny days in a row," I said happily. That is good," Jasper said. His hand brushed my cheek. He leaned in and kissed me gently on the lips. "That means we get to visit with Peter and Charlotte longer," he said. If only Edward was as enthusiastic about them coming as everyone else.